We'd like to welcome you to blackusa.news. We present to you this evening Political Cipher. My name's Doni Glover, publisher of Black USA. Be sure to like and share this broadcast as well as the other broadcasts we stream 7 days a week on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and YouTube. We have a number of hosts, including some who will be joining us here tonight, as well as regular contributors like Mr. Irvin Reed. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Miss Quandra Gaines. She hosts a show on Saturday morning, totally out of this bailiwick. But tonight, we're talking about politics, and we present her to the stage. Good evening, Quandra. How are you?
Hi, how are you?
We're good. We're good. Are you ready?
Yes, I am.
Okay, well, we're going to bring your guests up for you. We have Mr. Richard Deshae Elliott. We have Mr. Irvin Reed. Yolanda, you're going to join in there. And without further ado, Quandra Gaines.
Okay, my name is Quandra Gaines. I host a show called Community Connections, Resources, and Gardening on Saturday morning at 9. But today we're going to talk about the political races, the power races, like Georgia, which is like steaming up big time. Pennsylvania for the seats of governor, Senate, and Attorney General. And there are 35 seats right now that are available, which I'm hoping that all Democrats will fill in the Senate. So I wanted to ask some questions, but I wanted everyone to introduce themselves. So, Mr. Elliott.
Sure. So hello, everybody. My name is Richard Elliott, former candidate for House of Delegates in Maryland's 24th District, currently the Vice President of Communications for the Prince George's County Young Democrats, and also a freelance reporter with the Washington Informer, one of the largest Black-owned press outlets in the local area.
Welcome. And Miss Yolanda.
Hi, Yolanda Pulley. Former candidate for mayor in 2020. Also have an organization called People Empowered by the Struggle, and we on Doni's network as Frontline News that come on every Monday at 6 p.m.
Okay, and Mr. Reed?
Yes, I am Irvin Reed. I am a fan of Richard Elliott, and I've been a political consultant in the state of Maryland for several years, mainly in Prince George's County, and started in Baltimore and Washington, D.C.
All right, and Mr. Mitchell, I watch your show.
Well, great to hear you watching the show. I appreciate it. So we're doing intros. My name's Martin Mitchell, also known as the Cannabis Councilman. I am from Laurel, Maryland, and yeah, I'm a fan of Richard, as okay. Mr. Reed said.
Good. Powerful. Okay, and Mr. Rodriguez.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening. It's a pleasure to be here.
I would like you to introduce yourself.
I'm Jason Rodriguez. I'm just one part of People Empowered by the Struggle. I'm the Deputy Executive Director and wear many different hats for our organization. I mean, we're out here. That's all I could say. We're out here every day. We're dealing with the challenges from many of our citizens, our most vulnerable citizens. Every day, we are getting phone calls from in need of assistance, in need of help, just to navigate through everything from homelessness to dealing with addiction. You know, I've spoken to many folks in reference to just wanting to commit suicide during this time. Life is extremely rough and hard for a lot of folks out there. So we just try to help folks the best that we can during these hard times.
Thank you for that, Mr. Rodriguez. And Mr. Mike Haney.
Hey, good evening, everyone. Good to see everyone. How's everyone doing?
All right. You can introduce yourself.
Hey, Mike Haney, and big supporter of Donnie and the BlackUSA.News Network. I host a show on Sunday nights called 60 Minutes in Black America, and we just started a new broadcast on Mondays called Wake Up Baltimore. All things positive, all things Baltimore.
Okay, so tonight we're going to talk about national politics, state politics, and local politics. So we're going to start off with the national. We're going to talk about the Pennsylvania race for Senate, which has been a quite interesting race. So I wanted to get your feedback about the actual candidates that are running. One who is actually being endorsed by Donald Trump. And it seems like to be a rat race because you've got libertarians, you've got Green Party, you've got the Keystone Party, you got the Constitutional Party. So I wanted to put it out there for each one of you to give some comments about the race in Pennsylvania.
Hey, well, I always got something to say. So how those people in Pennsylvania come up with a nominee like Fetterman or whatever his name is? I mean, what are they thinking up there? I mean, the guy admittedly stumbles. Not that that's an issue. You know, we're not going to talk about someone's physical impediments, but when it gets this serious and it's Pennsylvania and you put forth a candidate that's in the health and condition that this guy's in, and you know, I mean, they're in trouble up there. I don't know what they're thinking, what happened. I know that the Trumpeteers, as they came out for Cox in Maryland, among all that undecided, Dr. Oz, I don't know, it's going to be tough to beat him. Then you got Fetterman stuttering all over the place and saying he doesn't want to debate. What's going on with them people up in Pennsylvania that they put forth a candidate like that, man?
Well, he had a recent stroke, so he is in.
Yeah, well, I understand that. He was sick before the primary, though. You know, so it's not as though there weren't some issues before anyway. But my point is that the guy, I just listened to him yesterday. Mm-hmm. Okay, either you're in it or you're not in it, regardless of your ailment. Now, hey, he's got all the empathy in the world with me, but there's some serious stuff. A lot of people's lives are dependent on him coming through, and right now he ain't coming through. So he might as well go, you know, go wherever he needs to go. But Pennsylvania's in trouble.
I'm gonna. I'm gonna totally.
You laughing at me, Yolanda? You laughing at me?
Yes, I am. But I'm gonna totally agree with you. I mean, we go from someone who has, just like he said, we're not gonna talk about the man's speech impediment, to a doctor that was on TV. I mean, what are we doing? We go from it's quite absurd. Like anybody, not taken away from anything, but just like he said, we have lives at stake here. Mm-hmm. And people is basically using political runs as one, a showboat. Two, they also using it as a platform to do something else. When we come down, I'm very serious about what we do here in Baltimore. But when I look at other races across the states, it is quite ridiculous who's running and who's winning.
Okay. Anyone else? Mr. Elliott, have anything to say?
Yeah. Fetterman had been in Pennsylvania, unlike in Maryland, the lieutenant governor is elected on a separate ticket from the governor. Before it had been Tom Wolf. Tom Wolf had been resoundingly elected, which itself is pretty unique. Pennsylvania is a pretty conservative state. So Tom Wolf ever having been governor in the first place, not the most likely thing. And then Fetterman got elected as his lieutenant governor. This is Fetterman's, I believe, third statewide run. So not only had he run for lieutenant governor and won, but he also had run for U.S. Senate in a prior year. Mm-hmm. So there's people I know who like Fetterman because of his policies. If I lived up in Pennsylvania, I probably would have voted for Fetterman on an electability standpoint. But nonetheless, it again points to, especially for a state as big, as like geographically big as Pennsylvania, name rec is paramount. Like the number 2 person in that race from the get-go was Malcolm Kenyatta. And if I recall correctly, Fetterman got like almost half the vote, if not more than half the vote in the primary.
Yeah,
And
53%.
Kenyatta got something like 18% with Sharif Small, or I forget his name, but he was the son of a former councilman, Sharif Street. Sharif Street and him basically split the vote. That's in my opinion how Fetterman was able to at least win the primary. But from the point of winning the primary to now, where Fetterman had a stroke and Fetterman can't debate, it's impossible to say that doesn't have an effect on the voters. That definitely has an effect on the voters. Right now, what they've been coasting on, in my opinion, whether you find it useful or you hadn't heard, is they're just kind of calling Dr. Oz out of touch, like a New Jerseyan, that he's a multimillionaire who doesn't know stuff about Pennsylvania. And that works really, really well for like social media interactions. But how does it work for an election? We will see. Good to see you again, Mike.
Hey, good to see you too, man. I just don't know about a guy that his claim to fame is walking around a hoodie. You know what I'm saying? This guy walks around a hoodie. If he can't debate and talk, he needs to at least put on a suit and tie and look the part.
I
You know
wear
what I'm
hoodies.
saying?
I wear hoodies.
Mr. Rodriguez, what's your point of view? Mr. Mitchell, what's your point of view?
Yes, I'm not as harsh as Mr. Haney. I know that John Fetterman, he had a stroke. I will applaud him on calling out President Biden on cannabis. So definitely calling for him to step up. I will applaud him on that on a positive note. But yes.
All right.
That's really all I got for you.
That's all you have? How about you, Mr. Reed?
I've got to admit, I've not followed Pennsylvania closely, but to me, one of the issues that we have now, basically in politics, especially nationally, when you got the Herschel Walkers and Dr. Oz and these folks, I mean, we got to call it what it is. A lot of this stuff is total name recognition and building up, and ain't necessarily about the issues. From my understanding, Fetterman got sick during his race. And so, I mean, I don't think he should have dropped out. I think he did the right thing. And so it's going to be interesting, but I just don't see Oz as a person that, quite honestly, has the credentials to really be in a race and be, and to be a good senator. So that's pretty much where I am on all of that.
Okay.
I think that we should actually look at, when we look at people running for office, and which one is more important? Do you think your health is more important, or you running for office? That's just, we need to make better decisions when we talking about winning and losing. And some people just don't want to lose. I mean, I get it. But when it comes down to you having a stroke during your political run, then somewhere along the line, you should have thought about your health first. Maybe that was the reason why he had a stroke. Might be too much
Yolanda, I
stress.
agree with you. I agree with you. He should have dropped out the race. You got to look at Philadelphia. We got a lot of black people in Philadelphia, a lot of black people in Pittsburgh and the surrounding suburbs. And, we're going to be left hanging because a guy that Richard described ran for office 3 times, decides that he's going to hang in there versus doing what's better for the people. And like I said, I don't have an issue, I'm not harsh on his health because, hey, prayers to him, but he's in this race, man. This ain't no joke, man. It's a lot of people's lives depending on this position.
And black people's lives depend on it. And we got to, I'm all a black agenda. So if we're not talking about a black agenda, I don't care which one is running, which one have a black agenda.
Okay.
So are you saying Dr. Oz has a black agenda?
No, I don't see neither one of them having a black agenda. That's what I'm saying.
That's real.
Okay, so I guess my point is, who would make the better? Sometimes I'd rather have a crippled person that represented me that's better for me than someone that's not.
Yeah, but from what I read, neither one of them have a black agenda. And when we have an all agenda, I don't care about an all-inclusive agenda. I care about a black agenda. Everybody else have their own. We don't have nothing. So if nobody is talking about a black agenda, then you're still picking against the two evils.
Mr. Rodriguez, what are your viewpoints?
Well, I think it's interesting because the Times actually put out an article the other day that says, want to know why Washington is broken. And they say, look at the Senate race in Pennsylvania as an example as to why Washington is broken. They pointed to a Gallup poll that stated over 41% of those who are going to vote weren't happy with their current representatives. They were looking at turning over their current representatives. And I think that sentiment is true in many of the states, whether you have a conservative candidate or whether you have a long-term Democratic candidate. I think that you see that there's this sentiment between voters that they're just not satisfied with what's taking place currently in DC, and they're willing to change the guard to go to DC with a different agenda this time. And I think that's what you're seeing in this political race in Pennsylvania currently, is that you're seeing the sentiment of those who are tired of the status quo, tired of those who may talk a good talk, and in some cases come, with those who want to validate them. And I was always told, if you need a co-signer, that means your credit's bad. And if you need someone like a Donald Trump to co-sign, your agenda, I think that we're dealing with people with bad credit, bad agendas, and don't have the true voice of Pennsylvania. And again, that's what you're seeing in this current race.
Okay. So for the Senate race, we had a senator, Pat Toomey, who retired, who was one of the, as I would call it, the COOP members that kept the status quo in the Senate. What about the governor's race, Pennsylvania? Why is that? What do you think that's so important? I mean, because right now we have a Democrat, Wolf, who is still in office, and he has quite a few. He has a long list of people who are running after his position. Does anybody have a viewpoint about that?
I've seen more stuff about the Senate race, and I think that especially because of like how deadlocked the Senate is nationally, there's going to be more money going towards the Senate race, and I think the governor's race in Pennsylvania will probably more or less loosely mirror the Senate race, particularly because both of the nominees, I believe it's Josh Shapiro for governor and Fetterman for Senate. Both of them are already elected statewide. Shapiro is already the attorney general, and Fetterman is already the already the lieutenant governor. And the people they're running against, Doug Mastriano, I think, is like a state senator who is just like a random Trumper. And Dr. Oz even only barely won his primary. Among Republicans, issues dominate the primary much more so than in Democratic primaries. Not saying that's a good thing, just saying that issues dominate their primaries much more so. And there was like 3 strong candidates in their primary. Dr. Oz only won narrowly. I think that in both of the primaries, the Democrats ran away with it. And I think that both the Democrats are going to win governor and Senate in Pennsylvania. The one that's up in the air to me more so is Ohio, and I think even Ohio this time is fairly likely to vote Tim Ryan.
Okay. Now, the next race that I would like to talk about is the Georgia governor race. What are your viewpoints about that with Stacey Abrams and Brian Kemp?
Stacey was robbed, and I hope she gets it this time. I believe she will. She's done a lot of work, since the last cycle.
This is a rematch, so this is a powerful election.
Well, and I'm sure the governor's race will play a part in those senator races too. So it definitely is important that Stacey does well.
How about you, Yolanda, as a woman? What are your viewpoints?
Black power. I really admire that lady. I think that we can all take some pointers out of her handbook when it comes down to representing Black people. and that's what we need more of. You know, she stands up, she's not afraid to talk, and she's not a part of basically the status quo of get along, run along, that type of game. I actually like her.
All right. Anyone else? Mr. Haney?
Well, I was down in Georgia during the primary, and fortunately, they have done a great job of educating their constituents. She has done a good job for the past 6 years of educating their constituents. Like Herschel Walker is a joke in the black community. You know what I'm saying? He's a joke. Thank goodness, we don't look at somebody to gain 1,000 yards and think that all of a sudden they can go to Washington, D.C. and write laws, but her getting out the vote is crucial. I believe it's going to be a real close race, just like Pennsylvania, Mastriana, these trumpeters, these guys, because Dan Cox, who is our our Republican nominee for Maryland. So look at some correlation in terms of the support and how the election played out. The primaries played out initially with a large number of undecided. The same people that sit next to us in our offices and, smiling, joking in our face, they already made their decision. They just not letting us know because they don't want any discomfort with letting us know who the real them are. And Pennsylvania has always been one of those iffy states when it comes to presidential type elections, because of the significant amount of Republicans they have in outlying counties. Even though Philadelphia has a lot of concentrated people of color, when you go to the other counties and you go up north towards Buffalo, New York, a lot of Republicans. It's going to be close. I think Kemp right now is holding the lead down in Georgia by a couple of points, but Abrams is within the percentage of error. It's going to be tough. It's going to be close. Very, very close.
And keep this in mind as well for the Georgia elections. If no candidate gets 50%, there'll be another election.
There's a runoff.
Yeah. So even though they had the primaries already for the Kemp, Abrams, and then there's a libertarian election, if no candidate gets that 50%, there will be another election. And as we saw in the 2020 special election for the 2 Senate seats, if it is a special election, I would dare to say that would bode even better for Stacey. But there's been probably the largest political investment from the top level feasible in Georgia over the past multiple years between commercials, mailers. They've done almost literally everything you can do outside of pay people to register to vote in Georgia. And if that is not able to bear fruit, it says a lot about the uphill battle of voter registration in the modern day.
And you got to look at it also, the fact that in this country, the US of A, there have only been to date 2 elected black governors in this country, right? And we believe that we're on the precipice of Westmore being the 3rd for certain, right? 3 elected black governors, Doug Wilder and Patrick in Virginia, and Patrick up in Massachusetts, only 2 elected black governors. So when you weigh that, look at the odds, West overcame significant to become in a position to be the 3rd black governor in this country, So Stacey Abrams, when you look at it, we want to be encouraged, but there's going to, we need to help support her. That's why these are our races too. That's why Val Deming's race is our race. And we got to send them money. I sent Stacey Abrams $50, $75, whatever I could, because it's important for us as a people, 13% of this country, to realize that politics isn't just necessarily a geographical thing when we look at it. It's important that we get involved in other states' election financially as well.
And this is why it's important for us to know and understand and overstand why it's in the black vote actually counts. And like I said, we need to take a page out of Stacey Abrams' book.
Mhm.
because
Yep.
she really got them out there. And it's really important because just like he said, those the seats they don't want us to hold for some reason. You know, the seats that the higher up seats as far as governor, to be completely honest. Just like he said, the third in the nation, that's ridiculous. So you mean to tell me out of all these millions of years, it's never been another black good candidate to run?
246 years. 246 years. Two
Right.
black people that look like us been elected governor in 50 states, including the territory of Puerto Rico. Let's call it 51. Two.
I want
Four
to.
Yeah,
in
that's why
total.
that's why I said
I,
it's important. That's why I said it's important because, you know, when we talking about the the demise of black people in politics, that's where it definitely lie at. If we don't win these seats, then we'll always stay stagnated. And black people need to understand that voting matters. Your no vote is still a vote. So we need black people to actually come out and vote, or we will never get anywhere.
yes, I agree with that. And one of the things I wanted to say was we still have PBS pitchback. So,
Yeah.
technically three, uh, Mr. Haney, technically three.
So you're talking about, I said elected. He was not elected. He took over for a term. You're talking about Louisiana back in
That's
the
fair.
18th century,
That's
because you
fair.
can
I caught
also
that.
talk
That's fair.
about New York. Yeah, so I understand what you're saying. So we've had four governors in this country of African American descent. Two elected, two appointed, and Pinchback in Louisiana was not elected. He took over for a term, right?
Yes, he should have been seated in the U.S.
Right.
Senate, but
But when we
that never
talk
happened.
about elected, it's a whole different set of energy, right? It's a whole different set of energy than someone succeeding for some reason into that office, like the blind guy did in New York. Forget his name. That he succeeded in office. He was the governor in New
Okay.
York, right? But when we talk elected at 13% of the population, we have to understand the dynamics of a strategy to be elected in these United States.
Okay. So, Mr. Haney, can you list out the three that you said were elected?
No, so there's two that are on elected that have been
Mhm.
elected: Patrick in Massachusetts
Mhm.
and Doug Wilder, which was the first elected
In Virginia.
governor of this country, of Virginia,
Yeah.
right? And then Patrick in Massachusetts. Westmore is on the cusp of being the third elected. And as Mr. Mitchell mentioned, you have Pinchback from Louisiana was appointed, as well as the governor. I forget his name. It'll come to me. I'm an old man, so I forget.
Peterson.
Okay.
Governor
While
of New
you're
York.
trying to
Peterson.
remember, Mr. Irvin, Mr. Reed, come on in. Come on in. While
What-
Mr. Haney is trying to remember.
I
Yeah,
ain't gonna remember.
now, I wanted to say something because I've been running campaigns since 1986.
Mhm.
Hmm.
And people always tell me how black people need to vote this, that, and the other. But we never talk about how our black leaders need to give people a reason for them to vote. One of the campaigns, I ran a campaign election in DC in Ward 7. They have 8 wards. The second poorest ward was Ward 7, where I ran a candidate by the name of Kevin Chavez, council member. And he got 11,000 votes. If Marion Barry is in that ward in a race, either as mayor, and Marion lived in Ward 7 for a while,
Mhm.
there are 21,000 people there. There are 10,000 people in Ward 7 that will only come to vote for Marion. We can't sit around and continue to have people where everybody's all high on people like Obama and them who didn't do what they were supposed to do. There are a lot of people in this country, especially in the community like I grew up in Cherry Hill, who don't see a reason to vote, and no one has given them a reason. So stop telling me black people need to vote when they don't understand why they need to vote. Also,
Well,
let's talk about our elected officials who
Hmm.
aren't giving them a reason. And you got a guy like a Martin Mitchell who ran against an establishment, got elected, and continues to talk the same language he taught before he got there. So I'm tired of people talking about black because they don't see a reason that they need to do it. And ain't nobody on this podcast can give them a real reason why. Obama.
I can give them 10. I can give them 10 reasons why they need to. And I
Okay,
say it all day, every day,
okay, what
of
is
why
that?
these seats needs to be changed because I'm out
No,
here
no, no, I'm not
all
saying they
day,
need to
every
be
day.
changed, but you need to tell our elected officials, start with the people that can make a
They
change.
don't listen. They
But
don't
look, you
listen.
gotta explain, but they don't understand why. Somebody tell me, Irvin, you can fly to the moon and no one's ever flew to the moon, then explain to me why. If I'm continually going to jail, a president who has information in his household that is totally illegal and he's got special consideration, then let's just start telling the truth. We have a justice system that ain't fair. That's fine. It ain't fair. If you get this income, you have this justice. Yeah, let's just start talking the truth. Let's make sure all of our elected officials start telling people the truth. Then maybe they then will believe and start to vote. Let's not tell them there's going to be equality in this nation. It ain't. So until we start giving people a reason, explaining to them why, then that's when they will vote. And
Well,
I
I
want
sit up there and give them 10 reasons why it's a good
what reason
idea
are
to
you
vote. When
giving?
I start down in those projects, if you want to change your living conditions, then you need to change those
No,
seats.
it ain't gonna change it though.
It
Yolanda, it's not gonna
will
change it. They're
change.
still gonna get. They're not gonna be equal. Did you tell them they're not gonna be? You tell them that okay, if you live in the projects in Baltimore, that your ass gonna get locked up, unlike white people. Do you tell them that? Do you tell them that their school systems will never be fixed because America don't care about your schools? So do you tell them the truth? You tell people the truth, then you can start to get them to understand. We don't do
Well,
that.
that's what I was getting around to. But the problem is that back in the 80s when we changed, let me see, how can I say it? Our history of voting went down the tubes back in the 80s when we had these peoples coming out saying your vote doesn't matter. It does not count. And with just like I said, your no vote is still a vote. It's still a vote. When you don't
Okay.
vote your person in as in the and they don't even understand the primary election. We sucked at doing voter education in Baltimore City. We don't tell them that, oh well, I'll just vote in the general election. I'll vote in the next election. They don't understand the significance of the primary election. And I do it all day long. All day long. And
You know,
I try to give hope to the hopeless.
no,
I
no,
try to give vision to the visionless.
but
And
give
it's
them
not
reality.
an easy task. You can
No,
tell them all day long, but guess what they're gonna do? You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink.
but what I'm
But you know,
saying,
Yolanda, I'm sitting here listening to you talk about because Urban, I agree with you, man. But if I'm in the projects and you talking to me in the projects and I'm not motivated to get out of projects myself, why the hell do I care about voting? Okay, so if I don't motivate myself to get out of the projects, what difference does it make whether I vote or not vote if I don't care about being in the projects?
Well, Mr. Haney, you also
So
have to
now hear me
understand
out for a second. Hear me
the
out for a
voter
second,
suppression is
okay? What
down
I'm
in those
saying is
areas.
that sometimes we have to pull our own selves up by the bootstraps because I don't disagree with you. And I definitely agree with Mr. Irvin, but if I'm in the projects, living in the projects, you coming down there bringing me a practice ballot telling me to go vote, giving me hope that school's going to be better and that my living conditions are going to be better. Where? In the projects? Or are you going to give me an
Well,
opportunity?
it's no, see, it's certain sides to that, and Doc Cheatham has been bringing this to light forever. Voter
Doc who?
oppression,
Duck Cheatham?
Doc Cheatham.
Who'd you say?
I
Duck?
said Doc Cheatham.
Oh, I thought you said duck Cheatham.
Oh
Okay.
no, no, Doc Cheatham has been bringing it to light for area. I mean, forever. The voter suppression in West Baltimore, and we
Mhm,
sat up there and watched it during this early election. There was
mhm,
nowhere for these people to go vote at, especially
mhm,
down in Harlem Park area. We were down there transporting people from Lillian Jones down to Harlem Park. It was ridiculous how they closed down polls at the last minute and didn't tell anybody.
mhm,
And then they changed the voter thing at Carver, where people it's like 100 degrees outside, and you want these
mhm.
people to walk all the way around the building? Come on now, it's ridiculous how they did us during this election. And Armstead Jones needs to go. I don't understand why this man is still there.
Because he's doing what he's doing. That's why he's still there. Why would they go anywhere else when he's doing exactly what they want him to do? You have to understand, Yolanda, didn't you run for mayor?
Oh, I understand perfectly. That's what
But
I'm
didn't
saying.
you
I
run for
understand
mayor?
perfectly.
Didn't you run for mayor?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and we want you to be mayor. But the thing of it is that the establishment and the money is not going to allow you to be mayor.
That's why I don't take the money.
Just like they lived Armstead, the more we complain, the more tenure he gets.
But
See, we don't understand. We don't understand that only when we overcome the obstacles. My grandfather in the 30s, when he was given the vote, and they were trying to beat the heck out of him, didn't stop him from going to the polls. All of a sudden, they close it down because it's too hot, whatever. Oh, I ain't going to vote. That's our attitude.
What's a buck dance?
But I think that's where the problem lies at, is that there's enough blame to pass around. I think that past generations did not do a good job in keeping the momentum going. Because there was their sense of need to vote is different than the sense of need to vote now. They wanted to vote because they wanted to be a part of this American dream. They wanted to be a part of this process. And they were willing to, have dogs sicked on them. They were willing to have batons, hit across their backs, so they were willing to stand up against the injustice that this country was dishing out. Right now, unfortunately, and I say this all the time, it seems like in some cases, some of us feel that we have overcome. And because we don't have that struggle of the past civil rights, and the past civil rights hasn't kind of passed the baton off to the current voter base, unfortunately, many of us have become very lethargic, very complacent in our own conditions, and not realizing that the fight is not over. The struggle is not over, has never been over. And especially when you look at voter suppression, when you look at things like what Armstead Jones is doing in reference to the voter process here in Baltimore City, when you see what Linda Lamone is doing in reference to Baltimore City and its representation, just simple things that you see are going on within the electoral process, you understand that the battle is not over. The civil rights struggle has not stopped. But again, we just don't know how to pick up that momentum that was left off from the past struggles and the past fights, unfortunately. And that's what you see currently in our current dynamics.
Ms. Gaines, I don't want to dominate the conversation, but I'd love to respond to Mr. Rodriguez after you go through everybody else.
Okay, I have one question. When you said momentum, I'm from Montgomery County, so education, civics, government, empowerment were already set when we came into the school. We knew that our vote mattered because we're not neighborhoods, we're communities. So it's a difference. It's a group. It's a group of, we didn't have neighborhoods, we had communities. So when people, you saw your seniors, your parents, your churches, we learned government very quickly. We understood. There were conversations where I know there were times when I was actually at a meeting and they told a candidate not to run anymore. They weren't going to vote for him. And that was powerful for me, because, we have lacrosse, we have, basketball, those kind of things, but we owned our own rec centers.
Right. There was a gentleman by the name of Aaron Wilkes. I always tell his story. He tells me about this story about how in the early 80s, late 70s, how this big, political movement came out. A lot of it came out of the fact that Pops Willie Adams, they had raided his home, they had tore his home up, and the community said enough is enough. And Pops, Willie Adams, who had, money to be able to throw at the cause, decided that this was the time that we start moving these folks out of these positions, out of these seats. Is where you get the Mitchells, you get so many other political figures come out of that era. From what I understand, during that time, almost every district had a seat or two that was taken away and was put into Black power somehow. We don't have that momentum. There's no fire underneath us here in Baltimore City. There's nobody that's been, and I thought in some cases things like Freddie Gray would wake up the sleeping giant. Things like what we see going on nationally with George Floyd would wake up the sleeping giant. But unfortunately, it has not woken the sleeping giant. There's nothing that has woken us up politically here. And the ones that used to be the leader, or the ones that used to be in charge of that movement, was the churches. And unfortunately, we see that, with over 4,000 churches here in Baltimore, the churches are absent in the community. They're not as engaged as they were in the community. But it was the churches that would have the meetings, have the political meetings, and decide which candidate was going to move forward, who was going to be on the ballot. You wouldn't have all these people running for certain seats because the community would select who that person was going to be and would back that person financially and with the community outreach as well. We've lost that. We've lost all of that here.
Well, Jason, call it what
Well,
it
that's
is.
because that's because the pastor and the congregation have moved outside the city, right? They may come into the city from the suburbs to attend church, but they run right out after the city. But back to you for a second, Ms. Gaines, because I know a little bit about Montgomery County. And see, Montgomery County was never, I mean, you talk like it was all black there for a second. They let you all into an established community and relationships that were already there. And then all of a sudden, because that was a little bit of blacks, because that was one of the more racist counties in the 70s and the 80s with police, just like Prince George's County, beating the hell out of people that were people of color. Okay, it was never a county of significance for blacks. They let a few in like you because you're a nice person. So you're acceptable, you okay. But it wasn't as though this was our stuff. And then the Hispanics have come in there. They let Ike Leggett come in and be the county exec, whatever, and a couple of other blacks there over we're less of a population than the Hispanics in Montgomery County. You know what I'm saying? I mean, we never get a chance. Until we figure out how to pull our own selves up out of bootstraps. I mean, like if Yolanda becomes mayor, for real, what will she do? Will she just level the playing field, make sure I have good water, make sure my parks are open, etc., and then tell me if you want something, get your ass out there and work for it and do like everybody else do? Because see, I'm not going waiting for someone to hand me anything.
Well, see, Mr. Haney, the thing is just like she said out in Montgomery County, and that's the thing that we're actually missing. What they did was they took civics out of Baltimore City schools on purpose. When I was in school in Cherry Hill, Mr. Reed.
What's civics?
It was a mandatory. It was a mandatory thing that you did before you.
Is that politics or what's that? Is that like CRT?
I mean, it was learning about government. I mean, even something simple that we talk about all the time here in Baltimore City school system, just having a student body. I mean, and the argument that I heard was, oh, well, we don't want to create unnecessary competition and have people's feelings hurt when they don't win elections and they don't become student president or whatever have you. But that was the whole fun of having a student body, was electing someone, going through an election process, understanding what a debate was, understanding what the different positions were of each candidate that was running for school president or whatever it may have been.
And it taught you local politics. That's what it did. It taught you local politics. That's why I call it educational homicide. People get upset at me when I say it, that our school system has educational homicide, and that lawsuit that's going around, it belongs to us for a reason. And I still call it educational homicide. We're killing our black people out of politics.
Or educational prison intake, because every third grader that fails a test, a prison is built. So, and it's always out further in the county because they get tax incentives and things of that nature. So, I mean, we talk about Baltimore City Public Schools. I had relatives that were teachers in Baltimore City Public Schools, and at one time there was civics. Because I remember going on a school trip when we went to DC, and it was a replica of government, and we actually got to do a field trip where we got to meet different senators, different things, and we actually did laws and did legislation where we were Congress or Senate or different places. And now that system is not even, it's available because, my niece and nephew go there, or I have godchildren that are going there. But what is going to be the change in Baltimore City? Because we have black leaders in a black city.
All black ain't black.
Can I say something though, y'all?
Sure.
The schools ain't designed to teach kids. I mean, we want to have an honest conversation. Let's just have an honest conversation. Our schools are not designed to teach kids. They're designed to roll them through. So you can put civics, you can put whatever you want to put in there. That ain't why our school systems are there. Prince George's County has something called TRIM, where they kids a tax referendum initiative of Maryland, where you can't raise, the only jurisdiction in the DMV where you can't raise taxes unless you go to the ballot. That law came along when the school system became black because white people weren't trying to educate black kids. When I quit my job, I was in corporate America for 10 years as a salesman, quit my job in 1989 and said, you know what, I'm not sure what I want to do. So I went to go and teach, the substitute teacher at Cherry Hill Junior High in 1989. The most eye-opening experience of my life. They were not trying to teach those kids. I had my own class because they couldn't get teachers, number one.
What'd you say?
Number two, when I went to Cherry Hill Junior High, I had the travel club, the math club, the chess club. We could, I had instruments and all of that. They took away all of that out of school because they're not trying.
It's intentional. It's intentional.
That's what I'm saying. So we can talk about the school, but the thing that we need to talk about is reality. Let's have a real conversation. Government ain't designed to look out for us. Black people, the black middle class, and everybody, we got Obama, we got this, we got that. Obama hurt black people. He was the hope that a lot of people had, the last hope. If he didn't do it, they ain't voting because even he didn't make a difference. So let's just have a real conversation of where we are and where we are not. And what I'm saying to everybody is this. The reason those 10,000 people in Ward 7 came to vote for Marionberry because they had hope in Marion. And there's nothing you can do to tell somebody to go vote for this person when they didn't do it. But Cherry Hill, when I look at what's happening now with all this killing and all this murder, all those kids in 1989 who are now parents and some of them are grandparents, they didn't have a chance, and their kids damn shouldn't, and they don't think they have a chance. So you can tell them to vote, you can tell them to do this and all of that. That ain't the answer. There are models of school systems that work with the worst of us that look like us, with LeBron and some other people. If you go to his school, you are guaranteed a scholarship if you graduate. Yeah, you're guaranteed. Your parents going. So if we want to educate our kids, we can. So until we start having a real conversation, the schools, they don't work. They ain't going to work. They ain't designed to work. When I was a teacher, if I had a kid who was acting up, I'd send him out. The principal sent him back. At that point, he knew what I knew, and the rest of the class knew. I was going to be his biatch. That was just that simple. He knew it. We all knew it. It wasn't no education was going on. So let's just have a real conversation, y'all. I'm tired of having conversations with people. We have people in office that we love and we honor. We do all that aren't doing us right. Either if you think that the justice system is on, say it. Don't run over. We gonna know the justice system is unfair. Education is unfair. This stuff tell people in the hood, then they'll at least listen to you because they know you're telling them the truth. But this stuff about you come vote and we're gonna check. No, you ain't. No, this thing is real. Until you get people in office that care more about people.
How do you get them in office if they don't vote?
Well, how do you get people? What will they do? Who do you know that's in office care more about the people than their job?
That's what I'm saying. So you're saying, I mean, I'm kind of confused with what you're saying. We can't get them in office if we can't get the people to vote.
No, but,
and see, the thing is that when it comes down to our leadership, just because they're black doesn't mean that they have our best interests at heart. Because in order to understand politics, you have to understand how you're still being bought and sold as slaves, but down at Pier 5 in Baltimore City. And that's what's happening. When they take the money, they already sold you out. And we have to get voters to understand that in order to understand the people, you have to be one of them. It has nothing to do with a big name of Brandon Scott and my good girl Sheila Dixon. I love her to death. But I'm just saying, stop voting on name recognition. That's the problem with our how can I put it? I'm trying to be nice.
Stop voting career politicians, and that's the problem. We're voting career politicians as opposed to Yolanda has a platform where she calls herself the people-tician. She doesn't look at herself as a politician. And go ahead.
I'm sorry, but you said something real important. The problem your problem might not be the same problem as a person living in Cherry Hill.
Exactly,
Right,
and
but
that's my whole platform, sir.
No, but you
Everybody, you got to stop throwing all the eggs in one basket, thinking it's a one size fit all problem. It's not. Crime over east is not the same over west, and schools over west is not the same as east. It's stop throwing everything in one basket, thinking that it's going to fit anything. It's not, and that's
We
what
see
Baltimore
that.
City does. We have a problem with not following best practices across the United States. We hire every failed system and we bring them into our city government because they put money into somebody's campaign. It's at this point it's just disrespectful.
We see it all the time, especially with our homeless population.
Mhm.
You know, they throw all our homeless people into the Code Blue shelter, and then you have someone who may have mental health related issues. You have someone who has substance abuse related issues. You have someone who is there just by circumstances because they lost their job during COVID
Life
and didn't
just
have
happened.
enough money,
Those are
right?
what
And
I
didn't
think I
have
call
enough
life
money
just happened.
to kind of sustain themselves, and they end up in the Code Blue shelter. Each one of them have a whole different plight, and each one of them have a whole different issue, and they don't mix in any way. We're seeing that now when we're dealing with the population now inside the Code Blue shelter now, where we have folks who in some cases feel kind of disrespected in some cases to be in a facility where you don't have the mental health needs being addressed, but yet I'm in here as well with all these folks who have mental health
Being
related
kept
issues.
up at night. You know, we get those calls from those Code Blue shelters, you know, people being kept up at night because, you know, mental illness is real in our city. And then you have people, this one girl said, Yolanda, I don't mean no harm, but I can't stay here. You know why? I said, why? She said, because I'm homeless. I'm not desperate.
Okay, I've heard
I
that.
said, wow.
But homelessness is a multi-million-dollar business that ain't going away, right?
Ah,
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
do you know that one of our biggest issues in politics, particularly in Baltimore as an example, just my estimation, is that we have a misconception that the mayor is in charge, right? The mayor ain't in charge. The ones that have the real estate, the ones that have the money are the ones in charge. Keep your eye on Port Covington and see how that turns to a city within a city and they get their own representative. And then all of a sudden they got 30, 40, 50,000 people and all of a sudden they influence. Look at John Sinclair or John Smith with Sinclair Broadcast, who's relative to the bread man, right? His family, Atlas Restaurant Group, the whole 9 yards, put $300,000 to have a
Pacarakas,
referendum, put 300
Pacarakas
Packaratus,
family.
put $300,000 to have a referendum for term limits on the ballot. I love term limits, but here this guy's controlling because he want to get you black people out of office, right? He missed the one to have Brandon Scott recalled because he didn't have enough time. So if you think, and this is a guy with a media company, and then we look at what Donnie's doing, and how are we educating our people with platforms of media and communications where they're getting credible information and hearing the real deal. See, y'all blaming Brandon Scott. Ain't Brandon's fault that he has no power. It was not Obama's fault
It was
that he
Obama's fault.
has.
He's a dead
No, it's
man.
not. No, the man. If the man. Hey, listen, Irvin. I don't disagree with you. If you look at the structure, if you look at Washington D.C., which was the slave plantation for the white congressmen to come from all over the states, which is not a state or a city officially, Marion Barry had autonomy to do some things that he could do because it's structured differently than most cities and states. DC was created as a plantation to support the government and the support workers that it needed. Our mayors in our urban city have very little power unless they have the money behind them. What do you think happened to Sheila? She got caught up and someone, felt like she was going to help us too much. They're like, oh no, this ain't going to work. She
That's why
got to
you don't
go.
take the money. That's why you don't take the money.
That's where I
I'm
disagree.
not saying that she did or didn't. All I'm saying is that we don't have that kind of control that you think we got.
No, I'm not saying you have control, but you got the power to speak.
What kind of power?
Let me
What's
finish.
power, Irwin?
Power
Well,
is
see,
when
the thing is that just like he said, no mayor has ran the city ever because you have the thing called the Greater Baltimore Committee and
Yolanda,
Donald Fry.
One of the most powerful people in the world is Mark Zuckerberg. He's got 2 billion people he can speak to at any time. When you're the president of these United States, once you get that microphone, you can start a damn war. That's power. You can sit here and shut down a corporation. And you can change the stock market when he speaks. So he can address some issues he chose not to address. Yeah.
Who's that? Who you talking about, Obama?
No, you ain't gonna be there long. But if you don't think a person that every time they speak, the world listens, doesn't have power, then y'all don't. He's got the Justice Department that reports to him that he can start stuff anytime he wants to do it. That's power. I don't know.
And I think that's where the biggest change. I think that's where the biggest change that Obama really brought was a change in the Justice Department.
Absolutely. Freeing those brothers. You're right, Jason. Freeing those brothers that was locked up on powder cocaine versus rock cocaine. When him and Holden freed them, that's the only thing he really had the power to do.
There are people in prison today that are serving 10 or 20 years for marijuana that shouldn't be there. But yet you Negroes run around talking about let homegirl out of Russia.
I ain't no Negro, man. I'm black. I ain't no, don't call me no Negro.
I'm just telling you this. If you don't think the president got power, then y'all don't understand power. Yeah, if you don't think the mayor boss, he got power, he can go against Patterson.
That nigga ain't have no power.
Yeah, he got the power to do some things. Yeah, he got the
Well, they don't have no power because they choose. All endorsements is not good endorsements. Mr. Elliott, I need you to back me up on this. All endorsement is not good endorsements. And just because the person have money, then guess what? Right there tells you who sold you out. Stop taking the money.
Look. There was a county.
The money only goes back into the system anyway.
There's a county
I don't want to collect millions of dollars in a county.
They can't rely on people. They can't rely on you Negroes to support them. They got to get their money from the white people because you Negroes won't support them. Ask Mr. Irvin.
Hey, tell the truth. Tell the truth.
So you got to get it from special interests. Mr. Irvin, how much money you donate last year in political campaign with the Negroes?
I don't donate.
Yes. He don't donate.
Wait a minute,
He's a Negro too. He's a Negro.
Mr. Elliott weigh in. He dying over there. He dying to say something. Go ahead, Mr. Elliott. Give it to him.
Okay. I had a lot, but it's been so long since I could talk or think that
Well, you gotta jump in, Negro.
All right. So for one point, it's wild to say Obama had no power and that Trump had all the power. That's a wild dichotomy of opinions. I'm not going to say either one is right, but you can't hold that Trump is all powerful and Obama had no power. I do agree that on the finances, like Yolanda was bringing up, the Greater Baltimore Committee runs the city from a financial standpoint, but any mayor could come out and say, we need to do this. I'll work with the governor on that, blah, blah, blah. But the thing I really wanted to address before this all ended is right now, like half West Baltimore doesn't have water, right? Half of West Baltimore doesn't have drinkable water in the home. If we can't do the most basic thing in the world, provide water for people, the whole conversation around voting has completely gone out of a what am I going to do for you to a who do I like the most. And that's what I think that unfortunately politics changing from Trump becoming the predominant issue of politics for the past, I would say at least 6 years. Trump, whether you're for him or against him, has been the biggest issue of the past several years. That's changed politics even at the local level in a really weird way. Money has gotten deeper in politics. While people are donating, I think, a little bit more than in the past, people are moving money all sorts of ways now. Jason, you brought up how the Freddie Gray uprising should have been a transformative moment, which it was for many people on an individual basis. We don't have enough time in the rest of this to talk about how much money moved from one big pocket into one slightly smaller pocket during that, and how that in and of itself is an anti-revolution that prevented anything. So there's a whole lot regarding not just the financial incentives, but I think at the heart of it about how voting for many people, even at the local level now, is not about what are you going to do for me. It's not about what you can do to improve things. It's just about who you identify the most with. That is a very stunning change that I think, like Yolanda said, goes back to the I'd say really the 80s with the advent of television advertising, changes in the economy. But I don't disagree with Irvin from a very particular point of, if you can't do things for people, how are they going to vote for you? And for the most part, you cannot do things for people as an African American unless you have grand financial backing or you have incumbency. Unless you're in one of those two positions, it's hard to get enough power to block up votes.
Well, Catherine Pugh gave them chicken boxes.
If we want to do I would love to do an episode with election conspiracy theories with you all after the general election, including the stuff about the chicken box episode.
Man, I hope you ready for me, because I do my homework. Hey, listen, we can go real deep, just like Cal Ripken.
Every Wednesday at 7:00, we can go as deep as you would like.
We will definitely do it.
This was great. This was great. Jason, Yolanda, Richard, Mr. Irvin, respect you, man. I enjoyed this, man.
I love you, Mr. Reed, because we from Cherry Hill. We know the struggle.
We rich. We rich. RICH. Raised in Cherry Hill. That's right.
Hill.
We rich. That's right.
All right. So would you like to come back next week and we can continue and we can start throwing in some of these conspiracies as we go along?
The chicken box thing gets its own episode. In fact, Sheila Dixon's whole career.
Jason, I need you to start our meeting.
That's all it takes. That's all it takes. The chicken box.
Hey, Quandra, I work for Richard Elliott. Whatever he tells me to do, that's what I do.
Okay, I got you.
That is one of the young superstars of Prince George's County, y'all.
I see we're gonna go down the Healthy Holly rabbit hole next week.
Well, we can do
no
that.
Comment. No comment.
All right. Well, it has been a pleasure. I hope to see you guys back next week.
This was great.
Thank you for joining us for Political Cipher with Doni Glover. This is Quandra Gaines. Have a wonderful evening.